Hi, everybody. So just a moment ago, I was recording a video for you about thesis statements and, some tips for them. And one of my tips is your thesis statement is not about you. And I go on this whole little spiel about how your thesis statement is not about what's in your head, right? So if you set yourself up to be arguing, I think that the English department should add an extra essay in English 112, you've set yourself up to be arguing that you think it, not that we should do this. And I said in that video that there are sometimes rhetorically reasons why you want to soften that and actually keep or add in the I think, the I feel, the I believe. Sometimes rhetorically it makes sense. So one of the things that you want to consider when you are thinking about what does make sense rhetorically in a given context is the academic genre, the intended audience, and the material, of course, that you're going to convey. So this video is kind of a chance to think together about specifically person and point of view in academic language. So I think probably most people know, but I'll revisit it quickly. Most people probably in this class know that most academic writing is produced in the third person point of view. So the writer, like you as the person writing it, are not visible on the page, right? Like most of the time you're not saying, and I feel that blah, 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 right? Or you're not narrating your personal experience or whatever. And it's also like academic writing is typically quite formal in the sense that it doesn't include an address to the reader, right? So you're not going to like lean in and speak directly to the reader, and you're not going to use the general you either, right? So like the general you is when it's like, if you're headed down Court Street and you look to the left, like not you specifically, but like this, what one might do, right? So you don't do that in academic writing. See, I just used the general you right there. Sometimes rhetorically, you decide, even though this is a formal academic essay, I have a strategic reason why I need to use the first person, the second person, whatever. What I want to notice, or what I want to kind of point out for you, is how grammatical person and point of view work to structure emphasis in writing, because I think that's kind of I think it's probably the underlying reason why we use third person in academic writing a lot, and thinking about that underlying reason will also help you think about when you might want to depart from that norm. So the way to think about it is this, or it is for me anyway. First person, so narrating from I, right? From I or we, because we is the plural, is about experience. Like that places the emphasis on experience. I'm telling you my story. I'm relating something like my perspective, my experience. That's what I'm sharing. Okay? Second person puts the emphasis on connection. Okay? So I'm sharing my experience with you and I'm trying to make a connection, and I speak directly to you and I'm like, hey, think about this. And that can be very powerful. It's particularly great with speech making. Okay, so like the difference between speech and writing is important there. Connecting with your audience, not your reader, but your audience, can work really super well. And then third person puts the emphasis on the subject matter. I started to say the facts, but sometimes the subject matter isn't facts. It's like a quote from a text or whatever. Third person puts the emphasis on the material. Whatever it is you're there to discuss, third person puts the emphasis there. And you can kind of see how most of the time in academic writing, you want the emphasis on the thing we're here to discuss, not on your experience about it or related to it or how you're coming at it, and not on connecting with your reader on this regarding this topic, right? So say the topic is climate change. I could relate my experience of going for a jog in shorts in Sheffield on December 31st, 2021, because that was weird because it was 79 degrees and it has never in my life before been 79 degrees in Sheffield, Alabama on December 31st. Okay, it was weird. I suspect it's related to climate change, okay? Like we are having more days that are warmer, like our average winter temperature has risen. So that's experience, that's first person, and it's a perfectly reasonable way to enter a conversation about climate change in certain contexts. I could also use the second person and speak to you directly, to you, my reader, or you, my audience, and speak in terms of likely outcomes for you of climate change. And I could talk to you about the number of floods that you are likely to experience in your lifetime, which is greater than the number of floods I'm likely to experience in my lifetime because of climate change. I could talk to you about the potential loss of crop diversity based on climate change. I could talk to you about the options for where you may live in the future that are different from the options from where I could have lived a generation behind you, because we are actually losing shoreline because of ocean level rise because of climate change. So I could try to connect with you on that topic and make it personal for you, help you see why this topic is important to you, to your life. So I could do that. And in certain contexts, that could be a very effective rhetorical strategy. But I could also, and in many academic contexts, I probably would, mention neither of us. Say nothing about going for a jog in Sheffield, Alabama on December 31st at 79 degrees, and say nothing about your possibilities of flooding and where you get to live and all of that stuff related to climate change. I could summarize a number of meteorological studies, a number of geological studies, a number of marine studies, studies on agriculture and ecology, and I could pull together that information and present an argument that really never mentions any of us personally and just looks at the available evidence and extrapolates, this is the planet's likely trajectory if humans do nothing else about climate change. This is the planet's likely trajectory if governments institute XYZ policy. This is the likely trajectory over the next 50 years for this planet if whatever policy is imposed, right? Experience. What I have experienced with climate change. Connection. Understand this with me. Subject matter. Here's the evidence. And you can kind of see why most of the time in academic contexts, it's that here's the evidence that you're going to want, that is like the thing that's appropriate to that context. But there are times when you need to depart from that model for a variety of reasons. The one that comes to my mind is if you have conducted field research of some kind and you are reporting on your methodology and explaining like how you got your data. I have seen people try to do this with like survey was conducted and X number of participants were interviewed, and who interviewed them? You did. Admit it. You should, if that's the context, don't pretend that they were interviewed by some, magical robot or something. Just admit, I interviewed them. I found this number of people. I talked to them about this thing. Here's what we said. So there are times in academic writing when it makes good sense to depart from the third person model, and that's the ethnography, like the field research is not the only time you would do that, but it makes a good example, right? So hopefully this helps you to understand how we're thinking about persons in academic writing, persons in point of view, and why the third person is typically the default, but also why sometimes it makes sense to depart from it. If you're going to depart from, whatever the genre norm is, the norm of whatever genre you're writing in, if it's a formal academic essay, if it's a research report, if it's a grant proposal, etc., anytime that you decide, I may have to depart from the norm here, you need to be able to spell out for yourself, even if you don't have to justify it to an instructor, you need to be able to spell out for yourself what's the justification, what's the reason for the departure, what is it going to do for you. Excuse me. And sometimes the answer is, I actually don't need to do that. But often it's, I do need to do this, and this is why, this is how it works. And that makes you a better writer. It makes you a more strategic writer. It makes available to you consciously elements that would otherwise kind of remain fuzzy. So there you go. That's it for today. Thanks, and I'll talk to you soon.